Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the beautiful, currently wet studios on the grounds here of the Pinos Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I've got with me RDV on the line, and we're here talking about the one movie nobody knows about from Arnold Schwarzenegger, with lots of good reasons to not know it, and that is Collateral Damage from 2002. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Great. I'm not doing so great because I just watched this movie, Doctor, called Collateral Damage from 2002 with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Um, let's talk. I'll go first with my initial thoughts, just generally where this movie is. I didn't hate this movie. I didn't like it. You could argue it's anti-American without being really triggered about it. But this is a movie where Arnold's starting to show his age, and while at the time when it came out, it got delayed because of 9/11. I knew some people in New York City at the time. I knew one person outside of DC that was kind of close to stuff. I didn't know anybody that actually died. They had to delay the movie and it came out. So I don't know if the sentiment about it being delayed made it bomb, but the movie was a bomb, did not do well. It's not necessarily getting good reviews, even though I think Ebert gave it 3 or 4 stars.
Yeah, it made 10 less or a couple less than what it originally was made for.
Yeah, so for me, I choose to look at this film as Arnold trying to go away from his heavy macho, action days of the 80s, because actually he transitioned a bit into more of the family kind of action, as I like to call it, in the 90s. But then you get this one here, which is just him being a hero in a way, regular old Joe kind of guy who just happens to have a Mr. Olympia body, up against some kind of no-name Colombian terrorist, or maybe more than one. And of course, he saves the day, and it's just got a real obvious swerve at the end for the third act too. But here's the problem I have with this movie, Doctor, and I'll turn it over to you here in a moment, is that it's just not exciting. It's done well, it's shot well, the dialogue's not horrible. I like is it Elias Koteas, his performance in here? I thought was really good. It was very entertaining. But even Arnold, who we're both huge fans of, I'm watching this going, I'm just not feeling it. And I don't know if it just didn't hook me at the beginning, but I felt flat all the way through the movie. So what about you? What are your initial thoughts?
Like I said, this is when I first actually saw Cliff Curtis in a movie before, and then I didn't see him again until Walking Dead, or Fear the Walking Dead, to say.
Okay.
But the movie, like you said, it's a typical action movie. The fact that it didn't do so well because the fact it wasn't in the 80s. If it were in the 80s, I think more people would have freaking bought it. But 9/11, people were sensitive to all this crap. So I'm sure there were more people who basically didn't want to see anything that had to do with bombs or anything like that. So I mean, that could have helped. That could have hurt the plot a little bit, But like I said, it's far better than what you get from like Broken Arrow with John Travolta being the bad guy and all that stuff.
It does make you appreciate the fact that it's a very passable film compared to some of the garbage that's really churned out these days. I do agree with you.
Is it believable? No. But I mean, it's Arnold, man, and you should be watching just the fact that it's Arnold going to just take out a bunch of guys. It's not going full commando, but I mean, it's yeah, there are some lagging plots in here, and you bring up the plot with the whole the Colombians, and dirty cops. Yeah, that's Hollywood. Hollywood always does this. I don't think that hurts the film. I think if anything, that's it's. Hey, I wouldn't put it past it. Look at our government today. We're getting past.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's not possible? I mean, but I wouldn't call it anti-American. I mean, but like I said, this is meant to be based off a thriller, and I don't know. Maybe the book's better. This could be one of the cases where the book is actually better. If there's a book,
yeah,
the book's better than the movie.
That's an interesting thought too. Yeah, so the whole idea for this movie, for those who haven't seen it, because it is Arnold's lost film. Again, it's when you had suggested, "Hey, let's try and check this out," I was like, "This sounds familiar." And then I looked, and I went, "Yeah, I've seen this. I don't remember a damn thing about it. Not memorable at all." And then I rewatched it this afternoon. And I went, "Yeah, okay, I kind of remember all this stuff." And what I remember is, like I mentioned before, not memorable. Again, not bad. I'm not complaining, but I'm so used to Arnold delivering on a high level that I come out of there all jacked up and fired up. And here I just like, yeah, I just saw an Arnold movie and walked out of the theater. That was my feeling. And that to me is a letdown because I have such high expectations. Like I say, it's done well. It looks good. To your point, even the CGI at that time, which wasn't fantastic, it was suitable for what goes on in the movie. But basically, for those who haven't seen it, Arnold is this firefighter and EMT type, and he's got a wife and he's got a kid, and you see some cute scenes in there of him, working with his kid and his wife, giving the lovey-dovey eyes when he's not looking sort of scenes, and he's in the shower with the kid, and it's just sweet and it's nice. And then of course he goes to park his car, and they're working out a schedule with their kid with some chores, and a bomb goes off and it destroys everybody. And one thing I do like about the whole setup here is that this movie is not a wisecracking kind of movie that we're used to from Arnold. It doesn't have his one-liners like "stick it around" or "let off some steam, Bennett" or any of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not. So in a way, it's actually kind of darker, and I do appreciate that here. I think it treats
it's
what
more
it's doing
serious.
a bit more serious. No, I agree with you on that totally. So of course, the big "I gotcha" scene is when he pulls up and he says, officer, I just have to pick my wife up. He'll be back in a moment. And he's smiling at him. And we know this guy's not a police officer, but we're going, okay, Arnie's getting dude by the bad dude, and we're not sure what's going on. And of course, he is the bad guy. So, there's this tape out about, "Hey, Lobo," which is, of course, the wolf.
Yep.
And, some three-fingered wolf pack NWO type hand gesture stuff. You're like, yeah, okay, whatever. But the point is if you've seen any more than 4 action movies in your life, before the year 2000, you already know that you're being shown certain things that will come back later. So the only interesting character to me is, Elias Codius, the CIA guy who kind of gets in trouble about it, and then there's the whole government stuff which we don't care about because we want to see Arnold kick some ass. And so basically they go down to Colombia to try to figure stuff out. When I say they go down, Arnold kind of goes on his own, and then Elias goes on his own. They kind of unintentionally get mixed up later with a little bit of a glorified cameo with John Leguizamo in there and some cocaine, because at least cocaine is still good for something when it comes to cartels and stuff. And you get to see that Arnold, as your very everyday average guy, can still do everything. I mean, honestly.
There was some cool scenes there. The whole scene where they're at the FBI office, and when she starts doing the same handshakes.
Let's save that for last, because that is an interesting scene.
Oh man, I love that whole entire scene.
Yeah, no, but there is actually. You know what? Let me bring this up. You know what I think the best scene of the movie is? It's not that. And that is, I think, a good scene, and it's a nice little swerve, the way it plays out. I enjoyed that. It was telegraphed to 100 miles away, it was very obvious to see, but it's still nice. The best scene in here is when, after, the snooze fest, cocaine kind of stuff, you're like, yeah, there's a little bit of action or whatever like that. It's when the bad dude, who, by the way, has got actually a wonderfully smug, punchable face. He's great that way. There's a scene in there where they had captured somebody, and he's there with his 2 flunkies, and they tie the dude up on the chair, and the dude comes and he starts just talking or whatever, and he takes this snake and he shoves a clamp in the guy's jaw and leaves it open, and he lets the snake in the guy's mouth, not bite him, but just basically go all the way down his throat while the guy's choking on. I'm like, man, this is like some late 70s Charles Bronson,
right?
Torture your testicles scene. I mean, this was a damn good scene. I was like, all right, now we're talking. This is the real deal, not some fake crap. I thought that was a really, really good scene. Best scene in the movie by far. I was like, okay, now things are looking up. But to your point, it's kind of a light movie, or a serious movie, not a light movie. So it's kind of hard when you get a real dark scene like that to kind of come off that high a little bit and go, okay, what next? But I think the film really turns around when, of course, Arnold, who's lost his wife and his son, meets the dude's wife, who is so smoking hot, totally unbelievable. She's Colombian because she's an Italian actress, and their cute little son. You're going, wow, a replacement. I wonder what's going to happen. And then, of course, we find out what happens a little bit later once Arnold gets bailed out, if you will. So, that's like 2/3 of the movie. Yeah.
Francesca Neri plays Selena, Claudia's wife.
Oh my God, how exotic does this woman look? It's distracting. It really is.
She's Italian. Actually,
Just saying, it's one of those
yeah.
things like she comes on screen, you're like, what? What'd you say, Arnold? What? But she comes in there and she, you're going, okay, do we have a little bit of, like a Streisand effect, a Nightingale effect, all those whatever the hell effects where she like tries to like help him out a little bit because he almost break free. He almost killed the bad dude, but she's sitting there, wiping the one bead of sweat on his, cheek. And he's like, why are you doing this? And she's like, because you saved me and you saved my son. And he's like, he killed mine. And you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. But she helps him escape. And it's, of course, coincident that when they go to escape, that Elias Cody's CIA paramilitary group's coming in and they just bomb and nuke the hell out of the place. Because, of course, they used him as a guinea pig to kind of lead him in a little bit. And they figured it out. But there's a neat little scene where he's leaving the compound as it's under attack by CIA ops, and he's got the wife and kid, and they cross like this little pond or river, and they see the signs for, it's bombed, we can't go anywhere. So what does he do? He somehow miraculously finds an old rusty axe head, which he then miraculously finds some rope, which he ties to, and he drags it, lets off the one bomb so they can go through. But then there's like a little fight scene with one of the flunkies that we don't care about, who they're running around, and Arnold's about to take it. And of course, you see the little bomb stem sticking out of the dirt, and of course the guy ends up on it and blows up, which is kind of cool. I mean, that was a good scene for him not being Commando or True Lies or super soldier type role. That was a nice little role. I mean, so it is entertaining. There's definitely some good action to it, but something happened to action films at some point, not just out of the 80s but in the 90s, where even in the 2000s this feels like a little bit of a labor of an action film to me, Doctor. I mean, up to this point we're 2/3 in. Where are you at with the film and some of these scenes?
Like I said, the film, I had no problem following along with it. I actually enjoyed it a lot. Like I said, like I've seen worse movies, and I'll get flack for this. I hated Pulp Fiction. I thought it was freaking boring.
I think it's overrated. I like it.
Yeah,
it's overrated.
There are certain parts that they're funny, and then the parts are just like, okay, why is this even in the movie? But yeah, like there are people, that's a cult classic. People love the whole entire thing, even though it's like, I think it's, I agree with you, it's overrated. This movie, Jim Sorensen, hello, he was saying that he barely forgot this movie even existed, and that's probably true because this movie does not never gain the cult following, and it's one of his more of his duds compared to his other ones. Because remember, Arnold was always used to be like, he's known as Terminator. He's known as like, he's been doing. I think they kind of drowned out all his movies anyway, doing all these horrible Terminator movies. I mean, people forget that he actually did other movies because they were like, man, this movie sucks. This movie sucks. And so what else did he do? True Lies and Commando. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, his Arnold's category we generally love. We'll take it over just about anybody's when it comes to action films, but there's different types of action.
But this did. I was saying, I agree. This did feel like one of those like TV '90s movies, And like there are some scenes where like people do get blown up and stuff. Yes, like there are some.
Kind of like a not too smart MacGyver is kind of how I think of it. But a guy who doesn't mind killing.
it's a guy. He's a firefighter. And he goes around killing bad guys. He even figures out how to outwit, people. I mean, now maybe it had been someone else, and he's not all jacked up like that. Maybe he had someone actually has to like rely on weapons to fight. Yeah, I can see that. They're mine. Then that probably would have been a much better movie. They probably shouldn't have casted Arnold in this. I always thought that was kind of weird. Like, why is Arnold in a movie like this? He's usually This felt like this might have been a Dolph Lundgren straight to DVD movie, because this basically what Dolph Lundgren does. He usually plays an ex-military guy, and then he's either or he's a mercenary for hire. Mm-hmm. It always ends up having like the either protect someone, or defeat something, or just wants to stay alive. It's like I said, this is not your high quality movie, although. People would argue like, "Well, the budget. Look at it compared to some of the movies." I'm like, nah, I don't know. It's like I said, it's Arnold. And that's where they're hoping, they're banking on the fact that it's Arnold, that they want to go watch it. It's Arnold, a new action movie. And then you're like, hey, this isn't what I expected. I expected Commando. I expected Over the Top, you know?
Right.
Or True Lies, like that. Or even Eraser. Remember that?
Well, yeah, and the thing too is I think you're holding it on a time frame where, of course, he was an '80s action star that we think of, even though he was in a lot of stuff in the '70s. But what I liked in the '90s was, like, everybody loves True Lies, and you can say what you want about Cameron and Titanic and other stuff. He makes a very good spectacle film, and True Lies. It's a lot of fun. It's slow to get off, and I'm wondering. I think this guy was in True Lies too, so I may be wrong on that. The wolf bad guy, which we'll talk about the ending here in a minute of the film, but to kind of just continue with Arnold, people liked Junior. I wasn't crazy about it, but I liked how he's doing films that were not action films. And then Eraser, I did like it, but it was, I think with watching Eraser, I went, okay, this is not the same anymore. Arnold's not, movies aren't, the way things are shown on screen are not. Jingle All the Way was a fun, tolerable kind of kids film, but to me, I really disliked Batman and Robin a lot in the late '90s, and even though End of Days to me I don't think was a great film, I remember kind of marking out about it.
That was weird.
Yeah, but then The Sixth Day was supposed to be like kind of like a sci-fi remake, and I remember renting that out from Blockbuster Video and going, "Wow, I don't remember seeing this in the theaters." Arnold making straight to videos, because at that time, if you're an A-lister, yeah, your stuff would eventually, have 40, 50, 60, 100 copies of Blockbuster when it first came out for a few weeks, and people would rent it. But it's not like your movie debuted on that. And a lot of people who were later in their career or didn't reach a really high level or just, were on, would do that. And so it had this kind of stigma that, wow, direct to video. And even so that's the case, you have older action stars like JCVD, mostly that's all that they do, and they're profitable. That's a little different. But around 2000, 20 years ago, when The Sixth Day came out, I go, oh my God, what happens? And then, of course, he, became the Governator and all that too. So he kind of was not in films too much. But I remember Around the World in 80 Days, and he's like some prince kind of thing. And you know what? Again, it sounds like I bashed this guy. I don't dislike him. And we'll talk more about him, as the years go on here on the Xtreme Movie Show. But I'm going, what's Arnold doing in a Jackie Chan film? It just, I didn't get it. And then to your point, Determination, Salvation, when you're like, what? And then the Expendables were okay, but they're really cameos. It's like, he's got a lot since then that really has just been not what we're used to. But I think in here, what he did that I liked was he is supposed to be the Joe Everyman kind of character. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And a year later, he became the governor of California.
Yeah, like 2002, 2004, something like that.
2003. 2002. Okay. This movie came out in 2002.
Yeah. So I was happy that after him being the governor, he came back to doing films because he still is active. He loves doing it. I've always been intrigued by the Schwarzenegger story, how hard he worked to get what he did. He's not just a pretty body. He worked really hard at, lifted some serious weights. I mean, he's legitimate kind of strong man. I mean, he's the real deal. Some people might have a look, but they're not. And I've always felt that he delivers that. So I appreciate the forward thinking he had about himself and how he appeared, because I think he was like in his early 50s when he did this movie. So kind of laying off a little bit, working with kids, doing some fun family films. I don't think it's a bad move at all. I think it's actually in a way the right move. It works for him. He's not going to do like what Dolph Lundgren does, which is like the same film the entire time. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting watching this because, like I say, a lot of people just don't say that. Yeah, Ed's in chat saying, was he going for governor? Yeah, it was. So I think he was kind of backing off, and just because you're an A-lister for a long period of time doesn't mean every role you get gets matched up perfectly. Yeah, so let's talk, Doctor, here about the Swerve, Act 3. So, to your point, we have the smuggable, punchable bad dude who goes on these rants about whatever, and we don't care. Arnold's the savior. He saves the really super hot looking, totally unbelievable wife of the bad dude and her son. It's sweet. And of course, the CIA guy's like, damn it, what are you doing? He's like, You use me as bait, but you have to take us back on the chopper because only they can identify the target. And you're like, yeah, okay, whatever, because it's totally unbelievable. So there's some really deliberate scenes of them flying into, I think it's DC, and the kid's got his little mini Godzilla thing that goes through, of course, security, and the girl, and they're sitting around the table. And I admit, I don't know about you, Doctor, but sometimes when we do these government things, I pop hard when, you got people standing around in suits all trying to, not be serious, but then they plop their fingers and they snap and they point and say somebody and they say, give it to me, play it. And then they play some sort of vocoder thing going on where people are like, the people of DC are, and you can't even understand. You're like, okay, this is cool. They're in the war room, right? Because we used to be out in the battlefield. Now we're in the war room. And that's one thing I don't like. That's not an action film. But they're there. Arnold's playing cute with the kid. They're showing all the, at that time, up-to-date security features and pictures of real-time stuff. Because you see the bad dude drop the suitcase off in Grand Central Station. Super busy. It's getting ready to be, rush hour type time. And then, of course, the ladies goes up. She's like, excuse me, can you show me to the restroom, please? And the person's like, certainly. Because, they're giving her like bottled Evian water that's chilled. They're like massaging her feet. They're taking care of her while she hasn't like shown them anything. I mean, that's totally unrealistic. But Arnold's sitting here. He's, I think, got the kid on his lap, which is probably inappropriate at this point or whatever, because they've only known each other for maybe 10 hours.
Well, the kid, it's funny is that the kid's actually is Tyler Posey.
And and for those who don't know, who is he, Doctor?
He's Scott McCall. He's the Teen Wolf. He's the Alpha. MTV's he's also was in a couple movies with Jennifer Lopez.
I did not know that.
He played her son in one movie, I think it was. The kid, I said the kid was interesting too in the coming in this movie because I kept thinking like the kid's gonna have a bigger part in this, and then when you find out that he's not really even like that's not her son, it's just someone they adopted, and it's like, so I'm thinking like, oh, is the kid gonna die too now?
He seemed medicated, the kid, didn't he? He seemed like, he was like on too much, antidepressants or something. I don't know. He just seemed a bit listless, I thought, to me.
But man, that little toy comes back to play.
Godzilla, baby. Yeah, so I mean, you're right. I mean, we're pretty much at the end of the movie, and what happens is she has to go wee-wee because all the bottled Evian they gave her, and rubbing feet. Sometimes people have pee-pee reactions. So she gets up and she's kind of annoyed because he's like, because Arnold is so simptastic here. Simping's not easy, and he does it so good. I give him props for that. He looks at her and he's like, the boy will be all right here, or something along those lines. You do it better than I do. And so she does this little three-fingered NWO for life sort of gesture and walks off. And we're like, oh, how long until they remember the significance of that? Because she goes wee-wee. And, of course, Jane Lynch, who plays a straight kind of comedy person in movies, wasn't up to that point yet.
She was so serious in this one.
She gets her necks broken, minus the breaking celery sound in the urinal, because, of course, the wolf is not El Wolfo or whatever this dude is. He's the simp in the relationship because she's the one that's running everything. Because she takes the Jane's cell phone, she takes her badge. It's all a plot. Damn it, Doctor! It was a conspiracy, and I swear to God, everybody. Wait a minute, nobody saw it coming. Did you?
God, I hope not.
Well, spoiler alert, it's spoiled already. But what's cool is that, like you said, with the boy being a figurehead, you just don't know how it's going to be it. You start getting a quick second or two flashbacks, which they do, I think, in a better way, black and white with certain key scenes. So it kind of goes back to when Arnold first parked his car and said, officer, I'm just going to park you for a moment, please. And the guy's like, yeah, sure. Because cops never smile, and this guy's doing it. But there's a chick sitting at the cafe table, a hot smoking blonde or whatever like that. It was really the Atomic Blonde or whatever the hell that movie is before the movie came out. She's got the wig on. And then there's a quick zoom and you're like, oh, it's the woman. They were working in concert. Womp, womp, womp. Shame on me for not noticing. But of course we did. That's where I think the movie fails. Some of it's too telegraphed. But then you start seeing how things start to piece together really quick while the lady's escaping. And the dude's, of course, setting up a bomb and with a motorcycle going in the tunnel and all that.
I love that because he realized that they actually were going to blame because she was going to blame it on this other FBI agent and all that stuff, and she was trying to get her escape. Puts a bomb in by him. Arnold throws a bomb out the window, explodes. So I love how Arnold, like, you know, before everything, he closed the gate and then he knocked. He had a fire axe, so he hit this gas line and knocked it off.
Yep.
And she's with Claudio's on the motorcycle and his wife, you know, Celine. So she's on the back. They come up there and they're gonna fire the gun. And he's like, hey, "You're dead." They went out. They went out with a bang.
They flamed out rather quickly. Yeah. So yeah, he does that, and the CGI is not so great here. I mean, it's still serviceable. It's better than any comic book movie today, but it's one of those backdraft kind of looking things where the guy has to turn around. And she's like, "Go back to the controls," and they don't realize he's there, and he's standing there with the axe. And you're like, okay, I kind of like this. He's Joe, every guy. He's got his battle axe. He's ready to do some damage. He's outsmarting them. And your point is absolutely right. He outthinks them when they're upstairs in the control room. He pieces it all together quickly. He's like, "Bam!" or whatever, and he throws the suitcase perfectly through probably what would be shatterproof glass in DC, but it's a detail. And then, of course, the whole Godzilla thing was the trigger because you saw the Godzilla eyes going to turn on.
It was hilarious because, like, even though they survived the explosion, like, she comes at him again. He's like, "Here, catch." And she cuts the wire and like basically it's electrocuted. And then Claudius kills himself, you know, and he throws the axe at him. I was like, man, again, so this is where Jason reboot got Friday the 13th throwing axe throwing competition.
That's the Highland Games,
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and he takes the kid, you know, with him too.
Yeah, I've been holding off doing Rob's Redskin review because of the name change with the Redskins, and one of the popular names right now is trending as the Red Wolves. And I'm like, you know, I don't agree for the name change at all, but I'm like, let's go full camp because Snyder doesn't take the history or anything serious about the Redskins for 20 years. Where is that important? Well, it's because we talk about certain things that happen to DC and we get disappointed. And I think I'd agree with you. I think the comment you made about this whole film with it being kind of serious, it's really true. And I like how he's an average guy because even at the end there, he doesn't say something like, you know, "You're fired," you know, even though they burned up or, you know, or because, yeah, he dumps her kind of violently in the electrical panel, you know. Yeah. It's shocking. None of that. No. Can you
imagine that? I just want him to drop some one-liners in there, especially when with the asses.
Yeah. Yeah, but here's where I start off by saying I think you could make an argument slightly that this is an anti-American film. And what I mean by that is this. It's kind of a serious film, but I think they only kind of, from what I've read about it and researched a little bit, I haven't done a deep dive. Apparently there was going to be a scene, you know, on an airplane that, you know, got bombed, and, you know, everyone's kind of touchy around this time. And I think even in Crank 2, there's a scene where, or it might have been Crank or one of those films with Statham in it. I just remember he yanked somebody out of a car and he's like, "Al-Qaeda," and he points to the person. Everybody starts ripping the person to shreds. I'm like, wow, I don't know that you could do that today in a movie and people would get triggered. Like, that's not fair. America's an imperialist country and blah, 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 and all this nonsense that we hear. And I'm watching Arnold as a firefighter, the people that were considered to be the heroes of 9/11 and all that, no matter what you think or conspiracy theories about it was an inside job or any of that stuff, the bottom line is they were treated that way. And this has only been 20 years. And Arnold's kind of almost cynical, going, "You bastards, you used me as bait, and you this and you that." And it's like, it's not a happy film. I mean, I'm not saying it's a sad ending because it's not. You know, he ends up with a kid and he's alive and he's a hero and all that, but it's kind of empty in that way. It's not your typical Arnold film.
I can say, if you can see this movie or see True Lies, see True Lies.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is his forgotten film. So if you're a fan, it's worth a watch, definitely. Yeah, I don't really have any more final thoughts, Doctor, other than, again, it's not a bad film. It looks good. I think it's rather obvious what happens, but it's amazing that only 20 years could pass and Arnold Schwarzenegger be in a movie and we go, wow, could they even just remake that movie today?
I mean, he has no military training, but he's a firefighter, so he knows how to start fires.
And he knows how to put things out, meaning lives. Yeah, I mean, What are your final thoughts about the film? I mean, should somebody go see it? Should
Uh,
they not?
like I said, if you're a fan of his, if you haven't seen all his films, you're gonna watch. You probably watch this, but you can skip it if you really want to. But I mean, I give it out of 10 being the greatest. I'll give it about like a 6.
Yeah, I think that's about where I'm at.
Yeah,
5
it's
right in the middle, but 6, it's a little better.
yeah. Like I said, it's not horrible. I've seen horrible movies from the 90s. I've seen other movies that are worse than this. Like I can think of other ones, a few other ones, but yeah, it's Arnold. You'll still enjoy it, he's got a few little things that he does in here that's really cool. But
It's Arnold, unlike you've ever seen him before.
yes,
Sorry, because it's true.
Yeah,
it's true. This is not your typical Arnold performance, and he doesn't do bad in it. He does a good job in it.
I would say this is probably a little worse than the sixth day or Sixth Man, whatever it is he did.
Yeah, well, we'll have to revisit some of that. I know that we've covered Chuck Norris and a little bit of Clint Eastwood and some others that we really enjoy. And as far as other films going forward, Arnold is somebody that we definitely were wanting to catch up to. So we're just kind of doing some stuff in order, and I think we'll definitely be covering that film and some others, because on the Extreme Movie Show we don't just cover the popular ones. We cover stuff like
I'll say if you've never seen Arnold in a Colombian outfit, this is what you want to watch. He's got the hat on, the white hat. He's got the shirt, and it's just. And for some reason, John Leguizamo is in this movie. I don't know why, but he's in here.
He's always good. That's what everybody says. Yeah. It's true. He is. He's good in it.
They had a good cast in here. It's just that this is like the Meg.
The Meg. No,
like the
this
poor
is
man's
100
Meg.
times better than the Meg.
This is the poor man's Meg. But no, I definitely want to start doing some more Arnold movies here. So I'm thinking either True Lies or Eraser,
or Hercules in New York. That's obscure.
Let's not go that far.
The Jane Mansfield story.
Well, you remember Racer?
Crush her brawl lady.
You remember Racer? The technology from the '90s, and the gun is all about arms deal and stuff, and they framed him. Yeah, which was actually another good movie too.
Yeah, well, Doctor, thanks for showing up again tonight on a rainy Central Florida day here covering this movie. It kind of suits my mood for the film, but again, it's worth a watch. You got nothing better to do. I'm sure there's other better films, but we definitely wanted to break the seal on Arnold Schwarzenegger's films, and we've done Commando and a few others. But interesting to see what kind of reactions we have on this too. But definitely look forward to that. So. That being said, I'd like to thank, of course, Ed and Jim and others listening to it, popping in. Guys, the best thing that you guys do that's the most appreciated besides listening is sharing it out, because, like I say, we're growing. We're over 700 subs now. Yes, we did Buffy as the boys on Buffy. We're the Value Shop boys now. We're reviewing Ash and the Evil Dead for season 1. So the 4 of us are doing it, including Dalton the Authenticator and Professor Pixel. Make sure you check that out. We're experimenting. So if you guys have suggestions for stuff, we have tons of stuff. Material is never an issue, but we like to see engagement. We like the fact that people show up for it. So come up here shortly with Emily Team from I Love Comics. It's Top 10 Tuesdays, where we've finished covering the 1970s each year in the decade as far as our best films. And now we're going to take our best films of the decade and see how they rank. So hopefully he's up and about. He's off his onion allergic reaction situation. And so are we. I'm good to go. And for the Doctor, myself, and E, stay extreme. Good night.
Later.